Justina. This is my husband, Jeff. We currently live in Egg Harbor Township, New Jersey. We have three children. Our daughter is our oldest, Mila, and she just turned 9. And then our son, Lucas, is 5. And then Remy, who's 18 months now. So he's the one that started our whole journey for
Yes.
HI.
Yeah. So tell me about that. Why did you seek out a diagnosis? What was happening with Remy that made you think to seek out a diagnosis? Or was there somebody in the medical community who noticed some symptoms?
Yeah, so both my husband and I are in the medical field. My husband's an occupational therapist. I'm actually a labor and delivery nurse. So Remy was born at 37 weeks and 2 days. He was born for large for his gestational age, being almost 9 pounds. So they had to do sugar checks on him after he ate. The first sugar came back to be very low. So they had to give him some extra meds to get his sugars up.
But what medicine did they give Remy?
It was a glucose gel that they did orally. And unfortunately, when they applied that, because he was so lethargic, which I assume was from the hypoglycemia he was experiencing at the time, he basically coded and went into respiratory distress. So they started a code on him and they did the blow-by to help with recovery, and he actually recovered well, fortunately. And then he was given back to mom to do skin to skin, and his vitals popped right back up from both a heart rate and respiratory standpoint. And then they were just monitoring him for a little bit, and unfortunately he ended up having to go to the NICU to be followed up for the hypoglycemia, but there weren't really any other respiratory concerns. They believe it was just attributed to basically aspiration because he choked on the initial medication when they were doing it, oral administration. It was probably 2 minutes maybe, but it felt like an eternity as we just sat there at bedside.
Of course it did.
Having everybody rush in and
yes.
The whole event.
Yeah. And then once they took him to the NICU, they started him on the dextrose drip, and they kept on increasing it, and the sugar was still.
They weren't able to really hold him above 40 or 45.
Yeah, he wasn't. He was hitting low 30s.
Yeah, and I think they couldn't. They maxed out at like a D15 or a D20 maybe at the local hospital that we delivered. And they basically said they were going to give him 24 hours. And if in 24 hours they were not able to get him to be stabilized with his sugar, he was going to be shipped out, to a more specialized pediatric hospital where they could meet his needs at a higher acuity level. So I think we actually only went 23 hours.
20, I think it was.
And we were transferred to DuPont, where he spent the next 2 weeks roughly in the NICU.
Okay. 2 weeks transferred to DuPont. Interesting. Okay, so we spent 2 weeks in the NICU, and I know how difficult these moments are. I had a different journey with my son. We didn't go straight to the NICU, but I can only imagine what you went through. We were back in the NICU a day after going home, so a lot of similarities. And so he was at DuPont for 2 weeks. What? So, and then did he come home? Did you get a treatment? And did you find out about genetics? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say once we got to DuPont, I think they kind of had an idea of what was going on. So they were upping his dextrose. We were kind of getting the sugars to be better. And then they were kind of talking to us. They were like, we really think this is transient hypoglycemia, transient hyperinsulinism. We think, he just needs time. His body just needs to adjust. But the higher they were going on the dextrose, they were like, we're not sure. We think something else is going on. So they started talking to us more about the hyperinsulinism, talking to us about the diazoxide. And I think within a couple of days, they started the diazoxide.
Yeah, I think it was around day 5. Yeah, they wanted to give him some time just to see. They started talking to us about it, maybe even day 3, just saying, we want to be transparent with you. The road could be headed in this direction. but we want to give him the benefit of the doubt and see if he will recover on his own, if it is transient, or it's going to be something that we need to start medication on. And then they decided at that time to pool genetic panels on him while he was in the hospital, although we didn't receive the results until after we were discharged back home. But we were started on the medication, and they actually did a cure fast study in the hospital prior to discharge too, just to make sure that the dosage, was sufficient for us to feel comfortable with discharge home.
Okay.
Yeah.
So after 2 weeks, you came home, and Remy came home on diazoxide. Is that his only treatment? Yeah. Okay.
Diazoxide, Diaryl, and
Sodium
sodium chloride.
So
Okay.
that's
And with an NG tube.
and an NG tube.
Okay. And the NG tube only for emergencies, or?
No, he was not a very good eater.
Okay.
Difficulty with feedings from
Sure.
Super lethargic and a little bit of low tone.
Got it. Yes. And so that's interesting. You say his genetic cause was the ABCC8 gene. Is that correct?
Yes. So we were then diagnosed down the road with the ABCC8 gene, correct?
Okay. And did they tell you if it was autosomal recessive or dominant?
Truthfully, I don't remember. And I know they told me, but I don't remember off the top of my head which one it was. We were kind of told two different things at one point. Therefore, after we got to hop onto your guys's conference, we were like, oh my goodness, we need CHOP.
Okay.
Even though DuPont was phenomenal and everything they were giving us was research from CHOP, but they only knew what was out there, you know.
Sure.
So they were phenomenal, but they were only telling us what they knew. But so we were actually told that he didn't have the ABCC8 gene, that he, excuse me, that he was only had one of the gene effects for it, but not the other one. It was very, very gray line for us that we weren't sure.
Kind of told us the results came back inconclusive.
Okay. Okay.
So essentially, we followed DuPont for Remy's first 6 months of life. When he first came home from the NICU, his sugars actually went on the opposite end to hyperglycemia. When we came home, his first sugar read was like 250. And when we left the hospital, we were struggling to stay in the 80s. And they said, oh, it could have just been from the stress from travel home, change in location, but they remained in the 200s for the next 24 to 48 hours. So at that point, they started to titrate the diazoxide and continue to actually wean it down at upcoming appointments, to the point that at 6 months, they weaned him off of it completely altogether. Unfortunately, without ever, though, doing a repeat fast study. And he was essentially deemed to have the transient form of the hyperinsulinism. And we continued to check sugars just for our own comfort level and kind of on our own accord. And unfortunately, we were getting some glucometer readings in the mid 50s and low to high 60s. At which point we just sought out to transfer our care to CHOP.
Got it.
And we're down a whole different path after that.
So did he go back on treatment then at CHOP?
Yes. So we started basically with an initial consult and then essentially an admission where you guys repeated the Cure Fast study so we could determine, what is the level of diazoxide if he needed it, which they said, we do think he's going to need it. It's just a matter of what the dosage is. And started him on basically a low dose that he was discharged at. And we've had a few med adjustments, but not much. We really haven't had to do a whole lot of the weight-based adjustments. He kind of holds on a pretty low level of it. We've been very fortunate for that.
Good. And how is Remy doing generally?
Overall, he is a strong fighter. That little boy really surprises us every single day. He is just, when we're not sure about something, he likes to prove us wrong and be like, no, I can do this, and he will do it. And so it's been awesome to see how much he has grown and adjusted to, the lifestyles of an NG tube, sugar checks, medication,
Right.
getting a G tube. So,
Oh, does he have a G tube now?
Does now,
yep,
yes.
now we do.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, and yes, yes. And is the G tube used regularly or is it?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
he does take by mouth. We always offer his bottles by mouth for his formula, and then whatever he doesn't take, we put into the G tube. So
Okay.
we're not on a continuous or anything like that. It's about 3 to 4 times a day.
And I
Okay.
think he uses it 2 to 3 times
2
a
to
day.
3. Now
Yeah.
we've really cut back, which has been great, but he needs it
Yeah.
for the calories, and then also has been great to keep his sugars up.
Yeah.
For
Or
when
if he's sick and just not eating
Yeah,
well, if
not
he has an
eating.
ear infection or something like that, it's
Yeah.
comforting to know that we can still make sure he gets
Oh,
his
yes.
Oh,
calorie
yes.
count and nutrition's met.
Yeah. 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 And you have 2 other wonderful children.
yes.
Can you tell us a little about them and how you came to find out that they may also have been affected?
Sure. So, long story short, after we found out about Remy's diagnosis, obviously everything in our mind started spinning, and we're thinking the symptoms that the other kids, I'm like, oh, is this a symptom of the kids having low blood sugar? Is this a symptom of them, affected with the sugars? So, when we were speaking with our doctors at CHOP, they really had suggested for us to do the genetic panel on the 2 kids. So CHOP had helped us with the research department, and we had sent out genetic panels for both of the kids to be tested. It's only been about, I would say maybe in the last 4 months we found out.
Yeah, not even.
Not even.
Yeah.
And when they called us, they said, both of your kids came back to have the ABCC8 gene, which truthfully, I think we were both kind of taken back about that.
Sure.
We were kind of surprised. We kind of, suspected it, but then also we're like, they're very healthy children. They are
Right.
growing
Right.
great. I'm kind of would be surprised, and we were. But now looking back at it, both of them had hypoglycemia at birth.
Wow.
So, but neither of them were as dramatic as Remy.
Right. Right.
So the signs are there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Were they both also large and therefore their sugar
My
tested?
son Lucas, yep, he was 9 pounds. He was born full term at 41 weeks, but my daughter was born at 40 weeks and she was 7'3". So she was in the NICU though for a week for rule out sepsis.
Okay.
So, but in the process of all that, she had some sugar issues while there.
Right.
She
Right.
would have been home sooner. She was there for antibiotic IV. She had aspiration pneumonia from the meconium during birth. So she was very stable by probably day 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Then she just had to finish her antibiotic course. So she was there for a week.
So thinking about this whole journey that you've been on with hyperinsulinism, if there was one innovation that could have been there for you at the beginning, what do you wish could have been, your experience early on? What would have made it easier for you and for Remy?
I know for me personally, the most difficult part wasn't even necessarily the hyperinsulinism journey. It was being apart from our 2 other children and trying to do the split parenting thing, because he was born kind of during the height of COVID too. So, I mean, luckily we were so fortunate that the NICU was allowing 2 parents to be present, because I know at some hospitals only 1 parent was present, and I can't even imagine what that would have been like emotionally going through only being able to have 1 parent there, and not us being able to support and rely on each other, because we went through a lot of ups and downs, and it just seemed to work out perfectly that we balanced each other's strengths and weaknesses for the duration of the hospital stay. And we were fortunate enough to have our parents help out with the other 2 children, but they were scared to death at home. Is our brother going to die? Is he going to make it home? Are we ever going to meet our brother? We just want to see him. You go to the hospital and say, oh, we're going to bring baby brother home. Well, actually he was a surprise. We didn't even know if we were bringing home brother or sister.
Yeah.
So that made the wait even more difficult, because they didn't even know if we were bringing home a baby boy or girl until the baby was born. So just being apart from the family and not being able to kind of mitigate and go through the whole thing, navigate it as a whole family, because our family is super important to us and we're a very tight bunch, having to be split from them. And if we came home to visit, we weren't allowed to return back to the Ronald McDonald House because of COVID isolations. So we were trying to be respectful for that. So that was the toughest thing for me personally that I wish I could have changed, was just for all of us to be able to be there and experience it together instead of having to do things virtually.
Yes.
And for me, I would say when we were reaching out and telling our friends and family kind of what was going on, I was starting to, and like as their journey had progressed, I had people reaching out to me and be like, I think somebody I know has this, or I think I know somebody. So we started making connections with people, which was really awesome. I kind of wish I had those connections right from the beginning, especially other families, or even more. Over this past year and a half, we've met quite a few families in the South Jersey, Pennsylvania area that have some kind of mutation. And so being connected with them has just been so supportive, being able to reach out. And so I kind of wish I had that more from the beginning, and knowing, hey, this is, you know, what CHOP is doing, and this is, you know, what's provided by them. So I kind of wish we had that support right from the beginning.
Joined us in this work, and you did an incredible birthday fundraiser. And
Yes, yeah, that was such a wow. We were so surprised and taken back after we decided to do a fundraiser for Remy's first birthday and do a fundraiser for you guys. And we had raised over $2,000 with friends, family, strangers, and we were just so thankful and blown away of the love and support. So, and just, you know, telling everybody more about you guys and your organization. So it was really cool.
that is so great. And you didn't stop there.
No.
Now tell us about your latest venture with the car show.
Sure. So our very good friends of ours who own a car company called Keys Motorsports had reached out to us and said, we would love to do our next big car show and help with the proceeds to go to the foundation for Remy. So as soon as they said that, I knew exactly who we were picking. There was no doubt in our mind that we were going to go with CHI, and we had shared that with them, and they said, awesome, we'll do it. So they had decided that on July 2nd, they are doing a huge car show in Atlantic City. Everybody is invited, and half of the proceeds will be going to you guys. So we are very, very excited for that.